This is the wireless way, where mobility, IoT, and innovation drive real business outcomes. Welcome to another episode of The Wireless Way. I'm your host, Chris Whitaker, and I'm grateful that you're here. I'm grateful for my guest, Kevin Diaz. He is a founder, a product strategist, and the whole reason we're here today, he's the author of the Problem-First Method, a practical framework that helps teams stop building features before fully understanding the customer problem. I love this because I talk about this all the time. It's not about the technology, it's about the outcomes. So we're going to unpack that. Kevin draws from years of experience in SaaS and healthcare technology. Kevin challenges solution-first thinking and teaches leaders how to build products with greater clarity, discipline, and real customer impact. Boy, that's what it's all about. Business is expensive. Doing it wrong is more expensive. And one of Kevin's quotes from the book, I got to find, I want to get it wrong here. The most expensive thing you can build is the right solution to the wrong problem. Kevin, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Well, thanks for that introduction, Chris. I
Well,
appreciate it.
I'm always afraid of I'm not going to do it enough justice because there's so much more to what you've done in your life and your life work. So obviously during the course of the next however long, you can share more with us and gosh, I'm such a full disclosure kind of guy. It's killing me not to point out the obvious that you and I know, but I got to bring the audience in. This is a take two. As much as I love technology, even a guy like me that thinks he knows technology well, it fails me sometime, or maybe I fail it. I don't know. So we had a great conversation a few weeks ago. Go to edit it, and oh my goodness, you sounded amazing. I couldn't even hear myself, so I don't know what happened. So I did as much troubleshooting as I could before this second interview, but maybe that was just a good dry run. That was a dress rehearsal.
Yeah. Let's run it back today.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the other thing I want to point out, you're in a different time zone, about 13 hours ahead. So tell us where are you sitting today?
So I'm in Japan. It's Thursday at 10 p.m. here. Just had a good full day of work. We actually had a video crew into the office today. We were recording some videos for Ambiki to promote our software. And so that was a first-time experience for me. It was fun.
That's fun. All right, man, you're just having a day of media. I love it. Sitting from Japan. And, it's, again, always the first question, is really, what else can you tell us? I mean, what's not the bio for Kevin? What can you share with us?
Well, as we just talked about, I'm in Japan. So I think probably it makes sense to go back to how I got here. And I would take it back to my sophomore year at Wake Forest University. So this was a liberal arts school, and you had to take, a whole range of courses, one of those being a language course. And throughout high school, I had studied Spanish, but, I was never really great at languages. So I thought, there's no way I can study abroad in Spain and take classes in Spanish. But it just so happened, this wonderful little old lady comes in and presents about Japan study abroad. At first, I ignored it, put the paper in my notebook, and kind of forgot about it. But my roommate at the time, he was really into Japanese cars, and he was on Japanese car forums every night. So a couple weeks later, found the paper in my notebook, showed it to him. He's like, Kevin, we should check this out. They have business courses. The courses are in English. You don't have to have any prior language experience. Let's give it a shot. So we did. I was supposed to stay for one semester, ended up staying for the whole year. Really loved it. After graduation, I went into investment banking. This was back in 2006, 2007, right before the financial crisis. I was in the asset-backed securities group, so kind of related to what the financial crisis was about. Like, we weren't doing real estate, we were doing car loan packaging. It was an interesting, challenging job where I learned a lot, but also I kind of had this feeling that this isn't my calling. This isn't my, what I want to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. I didn't know. But 2008, did a 180, decided to go teach English in Japan. And it was actually at that job where they had, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, Lotus Notes. Does that ring a bell?
It sure does.
So they had this Lotus Notes program. It was all in Japanese. And there was just no way for the foreign English teachers to track the students at the school or their progress. So that was actually my first foray into programming. I started teaching myself programming to make this desktop application that would be able to track student progress so that we could know, like, what books had they been working on, how long had they been at the school, what were their goals in studying English. And that, long story short, like that kind of first entrance into programming started a whole new career path. When I worked through the translation industry, and now I'm working creating software for, in the US, private practices, speech language pathologist private practices, so that work in the pediatrics, so helping kids, birth to elementary school age who are having trouble with speaking and helping them get better.
It's fascinating. And so has it been over 20 years that you've been in Japan? About right? Or
Yeah,
did you
came over in 2008, so yeah, getting
coming
close
up?
to.
Getting close. So I guess the obvious question for me, I'm thinking, I mean, how would you rate your Japanese speaking skill, the language? I mean, are you expert level fluent or how's that?
I am maybe high conversational. I want to be
Okay.
better, but I'm kind of in this English bubble where I work all day for a US company remotely. So all day, like in English. And then I have three young boys now, and they go to school and they get Japanese at school, and we want them to be, bilingual. So at home, we want them to speak English. So when they come home, my wife wants me to speak English in the house. So I'm kind of in this bubble where all day, every day, I'm speaking English and don't get a chance to practice my own Japanese. But, uh, can get around in daily life. Definitely, very highly conversational, but wish I could be more fluent.
Yeah, it kind of some reason this corny joke popped in my head as you were talking about, if you want to seem smart around people, just kind of rambling, go, what's the English word I'm trying to think of? Being I only speak English, but it makes people think, oh, are you thinking another language? And yeah, and you brought back a fond memory. I think I remember telling you about last time. I was in the military, spent 2 years in South Korea, 2 different years, 2 different decades practically. And it was like 7 or 8 years between. So it was really cool to go there. Gosh, now 1988 seems like another, era. It was another century ago, right? It was a different century. But 1988, right after the Olympics, was amazing. Really just grew to love the culture, the people. The Korean Army, South Korean Army soldiers lived in our barracks. They're called Katusas, Korean augmentee to the U.S. Army acronym. So I really got to, just be around a lot. And I picked up a handful of conversational Korean, and then one day there was this organization right outside the army base. It's nothing to do with the military. It was just a civilian organization, but they were there as I think it was kind of like an outreach thing, and that they had English as a second language class, and they're like looking for volunteers. And I was like, well, I don't think I speak enough Korean to be able to help here. And they're like, no, we just, actually they can speak enough English. They just need someone to go through and explain pop culture and look at Time Magazine and People Magazine and explain, because certain ways of slang, you're like, it's then you realize how hard English language can be. We have a lot of words that sound the same, spelled differently, but pronounced differently, all this stuff. So it was that so I can imagine the challenges just thinking through my experience there. So that takes us all the way to we'll fast forward to current day. You tell us about the moment you realized, hey, there's a problem with the way we approach product development, solutions, just analytical thinking. What was the moment that you feel like I need to write this book and I want to call it Prob First Method? So tell us about what brought you to that day.
Yeah, I would say it was a evolving process over 5 years. So we had released different features on Ambiki. Some worked really well, some didn't work really well. Studying the ones that failed and trying to figure out, like, where did we go wrong? And I found this theme where tracing it back, it always ended up that we weren't solving the right problem, and we had kind of jumped to a solution before we really understood the problem. And then, what finally pushed me to write the book was I was feeling these different pressures within the company where I felt like we were getting pulled in this direction to rush to a solution for a variety of reasons. And it was, it might have been the right path, but I felt like we hadn't taken the couple of minutes to really understand how we arrived at that decision. And like something felt off from a principle standpoint. At first, it was tough for me to articulate, but then, like, when I finally started getting my thoughts out and writing it down, like, that's how the book came to fruition. That's where a lot of this came from. And, some of those factors that were driving it that I noticed were like, one, customers have become a lot more sophisticated. So, back when I started developing software, 10 years ago, technology for customers was magic. Like they would come to you with somewhat ambiguous like struggle or pain point or problem, and you could do some good discovery and you could build them a solution, and they're like, oh my, wow, you're a magician, this is amazing. And now like customers, they're using hundreds of apps on their phone and web apps, and they've seen good UX, they've seen bad UX, so they're no longer coming to you with these ambiguous pain points. They're coming to you asking for very specific, I need this feature, or I need this export to Excel button here, or I want SMS messaging. And it can be, very easy to want to please them, to want to jump on that. Like, hey, yeah, this customer came to us with this need, like let's do it. And at the end of the day, that might be the thing that you want to implement, that might be the right solution. But what the book does and what the book tries to preach and give some tools around is taking a pause, making sure that you understand, what is the deeper problem. So if they ask for this export to Excel button on this page, why? What are they going to use it for? How does that fit into their workflow? You might end up at the solution of that export to Excel button, or you might end up at a totally different solution that maybe even solves their pain even better and maybe takes away a whole 30-minute workflow that they had that you wouldn't have discovered if you hadn't asked those couple extra questions to get there, and if you had just jumped to what they asked for in that support ticket. So that's kind of the heart of the book, and some different stories around that, both, stories of where companies have gotten it wrong, both in my own journey and some bigger companies. And then also some examples of like where companies have gotten it right and how that worked out.
Well, as you're talking, I had all these situations popping up in my head of where I'm like, yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, even my world of wireless consulting, I mean, a factory will come to me and say, hey, our Wi-Fi network is got, spotty, it's got dead zones, and our robotic forklifts are coming offline, have to return to station, and we're losing productivity. We need a new upgrade, a refresh on our Wi-Fi network. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. It's easy to go, okay, we could do that, a lot more APs and all. But the real solution is probably private cellular network. That's what you really need because that's built more for what you're using it for. But the thing is, they don't know that, right? The end user doesn't always have the full story, and technology is moving so fast. Sometimes end users, yeah, they're stuck on what was last decades or last year's technology and not realizing there may be a better option, maybe even more affordable option. Yeah, because rolling out a new Wi-Fi network, that's not I mean, this both of them are gonna be expensive, but you want the one that's gonna work. Something I don't think we talked much about when we first met, but, I gotta ask you, as a developer and you mentioned software development and whatnot, what's your thoughts on this AI? I just came back from the AI master class in St. Louis, and we talked a lot about I mean, it was all about AI and CX and cybersecurity and cloud, and I mean, we were unpacking AI in every part of the tech stack, and it was fascinating. So what's your take on that? I mean, because we hear a lot about AI taking people's jobs. Of course, developers is on the list, right? I mean, how is that impacting your business?
Yeah. On the one hand, AI is amazing, and we've been able to do some really cool stuff, both on just internally, like how our development team has been able to move faster, but also in some of the features we've been able to create for our customers. But at the same time, it can also help you to move really fast in potentially the wrong direction. So it has really just made it so easy to build things and to do that step and to like see a solution come to life. And I think what sometimes teams can miss is that if you run too fast and do that, and then what is the hidden cost of like after you deploy that? and now it's out there, and now, well, maybe the customers don't like it, and now we got to maintain it or we got to deprecate it, and there's a big cost to that. So, while that building phase has shortened thanks to AI, if you go too fast in the wrong direction and build the wrong thing, there's still that long hitting cost of that you've just now added to your team, when you could have, slowed down just a little bit up front and saved yourself on that. But yeah, I mean, AI, even in my personal life, has been super cool. So one, I had made an iOS and Android mini golf game back back in like 2013 or so, and then it kind of got lost to the ages. Like, it was off the App Store in 2015, and I kind of wanted to dig it up and see if I could find it just to show my boys. And so I couldn't find the iOS version, but I found like the Android APK online somewhere. And I actually used AI to like reverse engineer it and get it working on my computer so that my kids could play. So that was pretty cool. Like, I would never in a million years would have been able to do that on my own, but with AI, I was able to do that, and that was pretty cool.
We'll be right back.
Imagine the power of a single cell phone, just one small device destined for more than just calls. I'm talking about cell phones for soldiers. Your retired phone can be a lifeline for veterans and heroes truly in need. Since 2004, this remarkable nonprofit has transformed over 25 million donated phones into more than 450 million free minutes for service members and veterans, reconnecting them with the voices that mean the most. Your donation is kindness in action, reducing electronic waste and empowering those who served. Each device helps fund urgent communication, calling cards, and programs that rebuild connections, restore hope, and unlock new opportunities for veterans. Check the drawer. Your unused phone could make an extraordinary difference. Simply send it in or drop it off at one of the thousands of locations nationwide and give someone the chance to reach loved ones. Visit cellphonesforsoldiers.com today, because even a single device can spark life-changing connections for veterans all across the country. That's cellphonesforsoldiers.com.
Is it fair to say, do you use AI pretty regularly in your day? I mean, is it kind of just another tool that's a regular occurrence for you? I mean, or in your, how about your colleagues?
Yeah. Personally, over the last 6 months, it's become a huge part of my daily workflow.
Same.
We've definitely been using it a lot more at the company. It's definitely person by person. Some people are more hesitant or don't know how it's going to fit into their workflow yet. And other people are definitely on the early adapter scale. I mean, where I do worry is definitely, I worry about juniors coming up in the future, the next generation of, I partially feel like a big part of the learning experience was that hard won knowledge of like having to fight through stuff and having to figure it out and fail a lot and try things. And partially, AI just makes that so easy that a little bit worried that like, is the next generation going to get that hard won knowledge?
Yeah. Yeah, that analytical problem solving, organic thinking, right? I mean, we were at this master class and we had technology consultants and the last day they had to present recommendations to a fictional company, and we actually encouraged and taught them some prompt engineering on how they could use the different LLMs and stuff to kind of, again, there's a short window. It's like, to do this properly, you probably need a couple of days or a week, but we only have a couple of hours. So let's talk about how you could use AI. And probably half of the crowd roughly was like blown away. They're like, I've never done it this way. Oh my goodness. You mean Copilot can help me create a PowerPoint? It usually takes me, a day or two to do a nice PowerPoint. I just did it in 10 minutes. It's amazing. But what first we were concerned was like, wow, we just skipped all that hard work, that sweat, the grind, of learning, trial and error, thinking it through, like, and we were broken into 4 groups and we gave them like, 2 hours to finish their presentation. They were done like in 15, 20 minutes. And then I was like, okay, well now get up and present it. Y'all need to practice presenting it. And of course, AI is throwing in acronyms. Oh, by the way, what does CPQ mean? I don't know. That came out of AI. I'm like, but I'm a customer and you're my consultant. You're supposed to know these things, you know. So then the aha moment was, oh, even though AI has given us all the answers, we still need to understand them. We need to know, how did it get here? You know, so it's just another tool. It's not the end all be all. You know, you still need that human compassion, empathy, curiosity, interesting. So in the book, you also talk about the whole problem first thinking versus solution first thinking. I know you kind of hit on it already, but tell us a bit more about what's your philosophy around problem first thinking versus solution first thinking. Because obviously, solution first thinking seems kind of, that's what our natural, you know, being wants to handle, right? It's like, give me a solution.
Yeah, I think not only is it like our natural being, but it's almost like the system of the company is kind of set up by default for that, right? Your sales team is going to be talking to customers and they're going to hear like, we need feature X or we're going to go to the competitor. You know, your boss or investor base might be seeing like, hey, all these other companies are using AI. Like, are you guys going to implement AI? So all of those things are kind of leading companies to like, they're pushing companies to be solution first. So, you know, one thing we have done is, you know, in product management, there's this document called a PRD, so a product requirements document. So as you're kind of scoping out a feature, you can go into detail about what that solution looks like. But to me, that felt like that was already after you had decided on a direction. And we needed something before that, something that was still at the problem stage where we were trying to better understand the landscape of the problem. So we created this thing called the feature alignment document. And for the first couple of years of that, at the bottom of it, we had like, you know, what is the user or business problem that this is solving? But it was at the bottom of the document. And kind of it was a small change, but the real resulted in a big outcome was just moving that to the top of the document. So it was the first thing that the author of that document had to think about, had to write. And it was also the first thing that the reader of that document had to read. How I saw our team, you know, work after that.
So say that again. What was the phrase that you moved to the top? Repeat that.
That was the problem statement. So what user or business problem is this trying to solve? And the important thing with that is like removing solution language from it, because it's so easy for that to seep in, right? So for example, just going back to our like the customer says like, I need a export to Excel button on this page, right? Well, that's a solution. So how can we restate that to, you know, the customer, you know, maybe they're trying to filter data in a specific way, or maybe they need to their investor is asking for a graph on something. It could be a million things, but like we need to understand like what is the problem they're trying to solve. So
Yeah, the why behind the why almost, really,
yeah.
right? Kind of.
So that kind of the easy change that a lot of companies can do is just try to state the problem without adding in any solution language, which sounds simple, sounds obvious, but you know, sometimes can be actually really easy for that to seep in.
So what's been the outcome of that? I mean, how long has your team and you been using this feature alignment document? Have you noticed any benefits or you know, shortening the period of development? Has there been benefits to that you can share with us?
Yeah. We've been using it at Ambiki now for 5+ years. And
Wow. Okay. Huh.
I'm not sure if I would describe it as shortening, but I think it has also like saved us sometimes for building the wrong thing, or
That's the point.
you know, and again, like I'm not saying that you have to spend 4 months and halt everything at the company and, you know, do a million hours of discovery. This is more like I'm a pragmatic kind of guy. It's like, let's just take a quick pause, you know, make sure that we can write out this short document, make sure that we can understand the real problem we're trying to solve. And I think at the end of the day, what it might do is, you know, it might, out of 5 features that you were planning to do, maybe one of those you end up not doing because it wasn't the right thing to build at the end of the day. And that might end up saving you a lot, right? Because if you did build that and then you had to maintain it and then you had to do all the other stuff that comes with it, it might have sent you on the wrong direction for 3+ months. I can give you a story of like how that affected us back in the day. So back in 2020, around when COVID hit, all of the therapists we were working with, they were school based. And so they were doing these in-person sessions, and teletherapy wasn't a thing yet. And we actually did a survey in January of 2020. And we asked these 60 therapists at this practice, like, do you do teletherapy? Do you have any interest in teletherapy? And I think there was only one person who had ever done teletherapy and had any interest in it. The rest were like, there's no way, it's not going to work for us. And then, of course, 3 months later, schools are shut down and they were forced, into teletherapy. So we were creating this teletherapy platform for Ambiki. And I've always been on the conservative side. So there are these rules and regulations called HIPAA, which is around patient health data in the US and how you protect that. So as we were thinking about designing our teletherapy platform, when COVID hit, the government temporarily relaxed some restrictions. So they said you can use any video calling platform, even if it's not HIPAA compliant. Like, we just need the sessions to keep flowing. So for a couple months, they temporarily relaxed it, and you could use Facebook, you could use whatever, right? But we wanted to be more conservative. And so we were thinking through, and we had these group sessions, and then we were thinking about, well, what happens if, this one kid sees the other kid's video and there's a brother or sister in the background, or, one person's house looks like this and another is not so nice, or you see a street sign or something in the background. Could that potentially be like a privacy issue? So we're like, what if we create this way that for each of the kids in the group session, they only see animal avatars of each other and they can hear the voices and the audio, but the therapist can see all the videos. So we thought we were, super clever. We thought we were like being very privacy conscious, and release this thing, and nobody uses it. And we talked to the therapist and we're like, yeah, we just turned it off. Like, this doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for our sessions. Like, the kids need to see each other. So we had invented this solution thinking that we were being privacy conscious, but not really doing any discovery on, well, what problem is this and is this a real problem that therapists have? And so we spent, probably 2 or 3 months developing that, and then releasing it, and then talking to users, figuring out it didn't work, and then having to deprecate it. So all of that adds up. And if we had just spent a couple extra hours up front doing better discovery, really thinking about what problem does it solve, and is that a real problem that somebody has, we could have saved ourselves that pain that we.
Gosh. Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, yeah, just it's probably kind of a bummer when you realize all that work and then they're like, yeah, it's not helpful. I mean, ouch. Interesting. The 5 whys technique. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so this is really trying to get down to the root of the problem. And, you don't want to get too deep that you're just getting super, getting too philosophical, right? But sometimes if you just ask, one question, you get kind of a surface level answer from the customer, and it doesn't really dig deep enough at the root problem. So if you keep asking why, and we can get to the 5 whys, what it ends up doing is you can get a deeper and better understanding of the problem. And with that, what I have found is that you can then design a much better solution that isn't just surface level, but really hits on that customer pain, really hits on the underlying thing. Because a lot of times the user themselves doesn't even understand the deeper problem. Like, they're feeling this like end cause of it, and they're saying like, I just need an export to Excel button here. But really, once you do the 5 whys and get to the bottom of it, you realize like they're doing this whole 30-minute workflow after they download that from Excel. And if you can just create that report for them in the system itself. They not only do they not need the export to Excel button, they also don't need the 30 minutes after it of what they do with that data in Excel.
You just hit me in the heart right there, because we, at my company, we have a business analytics tool, and I felt we have hundreds and hundreds of reports, and you nailed it. Half the time I export to Excel and spend another 15 minutes manipulating the data to give me the information I need. Or, I mean, thank goodness I feel like Copilot's actually getting really good now about looking for trends. And, I'm like, oh my goodness, what used to take me 3 hours of manually coding and Copilot does in 5 minutes now. So props to Copilot getting better. It used to frustrate me years ago because I felt like it was horrible, but at least from my novice experiences, I feel like it's getting better. But that's interesting. Yeah. And if my data analytics guy hears this episode, I know you're doing the best you can. Because there's another saying I love: we're drowning in information, but starved for knowledge. And that's probably, especially in this digital age where everything's being captured. I mean, there's just gobs of data out there, but if you don't know how to manage it and keep it clean and, look for duplicates and circular references. I mean, there's all these things that can taint that data, but I digress. Another story I was thinking about when you were talking, there's a good friend of mine, technology advisor, consultant guy, and he had a client that has an amusement park, a water park, very large, and he had sold him, coax and fiber and a call center solution and some cybersecurity. And he was meeting with his buddy, which was the CEO of this amusement park, very large amusement park. He said, "Hey man, so what else can I help you with? Is there anything else going on in your business that's, causing you some problems?" He goes, yeah, there is, but I don't think you can help me. And Steve says, "Well, try me. What's going on?" And he said, "Well, we just can't hire enough people. I'm having a staffing issue." And he was telling me the story. I'm thinking, well, you're not you're not a staffing agency. So what did you say? He goes, well, yeah, exactly. I say, well, that does sound like a problem. I just got one question. What's not getting done as a result of you not having enough employees? And the CEO friend goes, "Well, again, I don't think you can help me. I got over 100 trash cans in my park. I need 13 employees on every shift walking around making sure they're not overflowing." Last summer, a little girl got stung by a bee, had an allergic reaction, and the lawsuit pointed out we weren't doing our best at keeping the trash cans empty, and that's what attracted the bees. Again, who would have thought? And again, Steve once again goes, "Hey, what if I could give you an app on a smartphone and sensors in all your trash cans, and it told you which trash cans were empty, half empty, three-quarter, and full, and had analytics that told you what time of day they're most likely to need to be empty. Would that help you?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, of course that would help me, but man, come on, that's not doable." So, well, yeah, actually it is. So he rolled out this bin sensor IoT solution, but I mean, how bright was he to go, "Tell me what's not getting done"? I mean, great. That's a why question. Why is this a problem for you? So you have more consultants and advisors should have. I think that's a skill that definitely have to develop, because in years past, it was more like, well, it was a financial problem. Well, I can save you money. Let me see your bill. We'll get you something back. In fact, most of the technical problems the last 10 years could be solved with more bandwidth. You just need more bandwidth. you know? That's not a problem. There's plenty of bandwidth. It's a lot of what you're talking about. It's getting more complex. The end users don't know what's possible. Yeah, so I love where you're going with this, man. I mean, it's all about the 5 whys. That I love that feature alignment document. All this is in the book, right? You kind of
Yeah.
walked us through it. There's a question here somewhere I'm trying to get to, but the book, I got some notes here. It's aimed for your startup founders, product managers, software teams, product designers, and any kind of innovation team. You think you would add to that for someone that's listening and going, "Hey, is this a book I should read?" Or who'd you write it for?
Yeah, it's a really easy read. It's really story driven. So, part one of the book is about stories where things didn't work. Teams didn't start with the problem and it ended up in trouble. And a lot of the stories, again, are from my personal experience, but we also touch on companies like Google and Juicero. And then part two is like where things did work, teams that did start with the problem and it worked well. Going over stories like Apple and the iPod. And then part three gets into those templates and those tools that you can use that you were talking about, Chris, like the 5 whys and the checklist and the feature alignment document and the problem atlas. And then part 4 is like where the rubber hits the road, where theory meets real life. So it's kind of stories of this in practice and like real life situations that you can run into, and how do you deal with that and how does it work out?
You mentioned the problem atlas. I'm glad you mentioned that. Planning instead of feature roadmaps. What's the difference there, and how do you recommend using that tool?
Yeah. So where this came about, I was feeling pressure from both customers and investors of like, we want to see your feature roadmap. And if you think about a feature roadmap, like features, this is kind of a checklist of solutions, right? You're already at that solution stage. And so when I was thinking like, all right, like, well, a map is very detailed, right? It has streets, it has buildings. Like we need something before the roadmap where it's still at the problem stage and we still haven't decided on a solution yet, but we want to figure out and prioritize what are the meatiest problems that we want to solve. And so, an atlas came to my mind where it's not as detailed and as fine grained as a map, but you have the terrain, the mountains and the valleys, like you see the features of the land, but you don't have quite the detail of a map. So the idea behind the problem atlas was, before we jump to that roadmap, can we first figure out what are the problems? And the way we used this at Ambiki was I ran a survey with the team and I had everybody on the team because I wanted to like get all the unique experiences of the sales team, the support team, the development team, like everybody from their own seat, their own perspective. And they just filled out this simple survey of like, tell me the top 3 problems you think that we need to solve on the product, and tell me the top 3 problems you think we need to solve at the company level. And everybody filled this out. I kind of organized the data, took out the duplicates, and then I had a great list. And with that list, I took a working group of the leaders at the company, and we used that to really prioritize, all right, well, what are the problems we should be solving this quarter? And then from that, then we figured out, well, what solutions, what does the roadmap look like? How do we solve these? But it felt a lot better that we were starting from the fundamentals, starting from the problem versus getting kind of forced into this feature roadmap before we were really sure.
I really like that. I mean, because it's funny, I have a feature checklist in a sense as a advisor to advisors for all things connectivity. And yeah, you really got my gears thinking. It's like, man, yeah, you're right. That makes a lot more. I mean, it's almost, because we always talk about use cases help people understand technology too. It's like, okay, so instead of explaining the technology, you explain how it's used by a hospital, for example. But by the way, do you still do a lot of work in the healthcare business, or was that just past experience? I mean, because
Yeah, so still in healthcare. So we're just serving pediatric speech language pathologists,
okay.
and we help
Is there
kind
any
of build
trends you're seeing there over the last 3 to 5 years? How, well, I mean, I'm asking you a question, but I'll give you one of my answers. I'm seeing a lot of remote patient monitoring where hospitals are trying to get people out of the hospital faster so they can put someone else in that bed. Are you seeing that? And what kind of use cases, are you seeing healthcare use technology? You mentioned a few already. Anything else?
Yeah, it's definitely growing. I think a lot of our clients, they deal with kids and they tend to either like work in schools or they have a clinic location where the kids are coming by to get services. I think it's become one thing we've seen, it's become tough to recruit and retain. There's a little bit of a shortage of SLPs. So, the demand for services is growing, but
And
there's a little bit,
SLP being
speech language pathologist.
right. Okay. That's interesting. Well, and in these high skilled roles, whether they've been healthcare, finance, manufacturing, yeah, you're seeing a shortage of it. And, there's a whole nother conversation to be had of companies maintaining talent. And one thing I'm finding, talented, smart employees, regardless of the vertical, they have an expectation of good tools. I've used the analogy once, you don't buy a Porsche and put it in the field pulling a plow. If you're buying a Porsche, man, you're going to the races. You want to win some Le Mans or something. So I think a lot of, if you're listening and you're a CIO, CTO, and take a look at your tech stack. Today's workforce has an expectation of smart tools, AI enabled, anything manual or having, when there's 5 steps, it should be 2 steps. You got a problem. I mean, that's an interesting. So the whole, I think employee experience is becoming just as important as customer experience in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And the other thing I would add to that is I think at least what we're seeing is burnout, right? And the burnout comes because of the admin work, right? Like these therapists, they went to school to help kids and they want to be spending the time in the sessions, but instead, like they're having all this documentation and billing and extra admin work that they have to take home at night. So a lot of our focus is on how can we build the tools to make that part of it easy so they can spend a lot of more of their time like at the top of their license. So, focusing on the stuff that they went to school for, that they have an interest in, like the reason that they got into this profession in the first place, not the boring, tedious admin work that has to get done. So how can we use AI to help with those parts of it so they can spend more time on the parts that really use their expertise?
And you nailed it. That's what thing AI is great for. There's repetitive task that really don't require a lot of analytical thinking. It's just, you can kind of take those off their plate. Wrapping this up and about to land the plane, of all the principles we've talked about, when you talk to business leaders and founders or product teams, is there one principle from your book that's kind of your go-to to go, like, if you only do one thing out of this book, you should do X? How would you answer that X?
Yeah, I feel like, technology is going to keep changing and there's always going to be the new buzzword, right? Like whether it's IoT or crypto or AI, like there's always the next thing. But I think the fundamentals stay the same. So I would say, my takeaway is understand the problem before you fall in love with the solution. If you keep with that fundamental, that's going to help you with whatever buzzword comes next, however technology change. I feel like that is pretty timeless.
Yeah, I love that. That's understand the problem before you fall in love with the solution. And would you agree? Is it fair to say that requires asking better questions? I mean, is that something you think, going back to the whys? I mean, to get to the 5 whys, you got to ask at least 5 questions. I imagine they got to be good. Very
Yeah, if you
good.
get good at asking questions, that'll help your career in so many ways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of Ted Lasso's saying, be curious. Just be
Mhm.
curious. Ted, do you play a lot of darts? I mean, that's a great line. Great, great scene. Thank you for your time today. Is there anything we left out you want to mention? Any other last words you want to leave us with?
I'm an easygoing guy. Come find me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in the book, you can go to problem-first-method.com. Have the ebook, the audiobook, the paperback and hardcover on Amazon. Check it out.
Did you read the audiobook or did you
I
have
did not,
AI
but
do
I
it?
hired a guy to do it, and he did an awesome job with it. So that was
Okay,
a learning
cool.
process
Okay.
for me too. I got to learn about like the different formats of like the audiobook, the MP4, I think it is. So that was kind of
Yeah.
neat to learn about.
Man, well, I travel and it's an hour drive to the airport, and I love listening to audiobooks. So that's next on my list. Again, the reason I asked about did you read it? Now I feel compelled to explain that. So if you like audiobooks, another really good one is Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. Have you heard of his book, or he wrote a
I'll have to
autobiography?
check that out.
Yeah, well, so he reads it, and if you know anything about Matthew McConaughey, he's got that smooth Texas voice, but he kind of acts out the different characters in his life. So it's almost like an audio movie, and it's very entertaining and just a lot of good aha moments. There's some really good life lessons in there. The guy's had a pretty fascinating life, so much more than you would expect a movie star to have. He's got a cool backstory. And I think you'd get a kick out of it. It's called Green Lights. It's not, no commissions here for me, but Matthew, if you want to send me a signed book or something, if you're listening, because you're probably not, but that's okay. Kevin, well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it again, man. Thanks for being flexible and patient and working. After a long day, you've had a full work day and you were doing a video shoot. So you did a great job, man. I appreciate you.
I'm so glad you had me, man. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, it sure was, brother. Well, hey, there you go, folks. Another episode of The Wireless Way. And as always, if you heard something that you think a colleague should hear, a customer should hear, a friend should hear, please share this episode with them. And you can always go to wirelessway.net. That's wirelessway.net and hit the contact us button if you have any feedback or suggestions. Love to hear from you. And with that, again, thanks for checking out this episode. And we'll see you next time on The Wireless Way.
Every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood for surgeries, cancer treatment, chronic illness, and traumatic injuries. Yet, only 3% of eligible Americans donate each year, leaving hospitals struggling to keep enough blood on the shelves. One blood donation can save up to 3 lives. With your help, we can make sure life-saving blood is ready before it's needed. If you're healthy and able, please roll up a sleeve and donate. Visit redcrossblood.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to find a drive or donation center near you. Donate blood saves lives. It's easy, safe, and one of the most generous things you can do.